What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Late Round Fantasy Football Show, sponsored by DraftKings. This is episode 9, and so far, this might be the craziest yet as far as news goes, just because today I feel like I've already possibly made some mistakes. So we'll talk about that because today's theme is don't make these mistakes on draft day. So JJ's got some stuff cooked up for us. It should be a fun show. I want you to interact with us. Please like, subscribe. It'll be good. It's a Late Round Fantasy Football Show sponsored by DraftKings. All right, welcome in. David Kitchen alongside JJ. Apologies for being 2 minutes late, but I had so many tabs open, JJ. I think it was because of just all the news, best ball drafts, the programs that we're using. I opened up the prospect guide during your live stream today. So what I'm trying to say is I think it might be your fault, not mine.
My fault. I'm the one who keeps clean tabs. I have like 4 tabs open at once.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. You've seen my Dropbox. I'm an digitally organized person.
Jeez, we are not the same. I've got a million tabs, but they're all grouped. I do have groupings, which you can do with Chrome, but then I also have a different browser open. So just all sorts of stuff.
How hard is it to just go back to the tab that you were in? Like to remember where you were?
My brain just is everywhere.
Okay. I mean, I know that. I've gone through that the last 7 months of my life. So yeah.
Want to say thanks to our sponsors, DraftKings. They got the draft one, get one last week. The best ball week felt like was pretty good. And then this week, you just jump in there and get some of that EV. JJ, you were on a stream this week or today.
Yeah,
with the Fields news, and someone drafted Tyrod Taylor in the 13th round.
Everyone no. It was the 11th round. 11:02 is when Tyrod Taylor got drafted. My thought though on that, so on stream, Justin Fields news happened, so you guys can see the reaction, all that, and we were very sad. And my thinking is someone queued him up, and then they ran out of time when they were on the clock. That has to have been what happened.
The star method.
Yes, because I did the same thing yesterday with Jalen McMillan. Well, it was that little bug that's been going on a little bit where you got to make sure you're on the clock on mobile. But regardless, like I had Jalen McMillan in a Baker stack, and I ended up drafting him 2 rounds ahead of ADP because I ran out of time. Not the biggest deal. It's not a Tyrod Taylor incident. That's not that big of a deal, but it happens.
Yeah, our training camp just started. Really, officially kind of yesterday. And are you just glued to the screen for any important news?
No, I mean, I don't get that crazy. It's gonna hit my timeline. I think a lot of this stuff this time of year is noise, but there's a lot of good stuff too. Like we saw some Chase Brown coach speak that was pretty favorable for him. We see that kind of stuff where I'm like, especially with running backs where it is a coaching decision or more of a coaching decision. I care a lot more about that than I do like someone asked me in chat today on the live stream, do you care that CJ Stroud is talking up the Iowa State wide receivers, right? With Jalen Knoll and Jaden Higgins? No. What does it actually mean? That he's going to throw to them more, that they're going to see? Wide receiver is a much more talent-driven position where, you got to be good and you got to get open. You don't just have to be on the field. Obviously, we hope that running backs are talented and rising up depth charts, but it just doesn't always go that way. If a coach wants to split a backfield, he'll split a backfield, right? And so, I think that a lot of the stuff I am paying attention to is more just injury or running back related this time of year.
Okay, we'll get to news in a second because again, we had some scares. We've got stuff already coming out as far as, again, I feel like I've made some good choices, but also maybe some mistakes so far in my best ball contest. We're talking about mistakes to avoid on draft day for your redraft leagues. And for your redraft leagues especially, we got the late round draft guide. If you haven't purchased it already, go ahead and do so. Just get a head start. And you will be getting updates every single Friday from here until the season starts, right, JJ?
Yeah, every Friday. Got a big update tomorrow. There's a lot. There's going to be like 5 or 6 players that are added to the targets and avoids list. Because again, right now we can react to stuff like throughout July. Not only that, but there's more ADP that gets published by different platforms, and so I can kind of see where the market's leaning and heading, and so I can be a little bit bolder with saying target this guy, don't target this guy. So yeah, there's a big update coming tomorrow.
Like, subscribe, comment. Even if you're commenting during this stream, comment later. Also, go visit JJ's other stream that he did today, this DK Millie draft. 120 likes. He changes his avatar finally for DraftKings. And with that being said, let's get on to today's news. Little piggies, stop going to the market. It's dangerous. That's right. Toes, the theme for today. Yeah.
Oh, so that's just like the headline for all of the news items right there.
Well, as far as let me finish. Little piggies, multiple toes, because today we had our first scare.
Yeah.
You were actually on stream.
Yes.
And Justin Fields was carted off and lower leg injury. And then someone stepped on his toe and dislocated it. X-rays negative. Just running through the whole thing. He should be ready by week 1, but obviously we had our first big scare today.
Yeah, I think it's not nothing though too. If they if they're like, oh yeah, he should be good by week 1, or they're like, that's the timeline. I've seen Jeff Mueller and others tweet about what this looks like, from like their PT perspective. And to me, it would be one thing if we had like an established veteran that's in this position, but this is Justin Fields, a brand new offense, a guy who has struggled with accuracy in the past, needs to get on the same page as his wide receivers. And I think that we should bump him down a little bit. Now, I don't want to, I've obviously had him as a target. I'm overweight on Fields for the rushing and the mobility and stuff. But I don't think that it's nothing right now because of the new environment that he's in.
Okay. I actually deleted the other one because it ties into this, and that is Malik Neighbors' toe also. This was like a news item that I put from yesterday, but he's still dealing with this toe that has like hampered him since college. He might have surgery on it in the future. Like,
I mean, he had it last year though too. Remember how there was and he had a 34% target share. So like, I don't want to, he had 3 touchdowns in practice yesterday. Like I'm not trying to overstate this because he is such a stud. Maybe it's something from more of like a dynasty angle. But I don't know how actionable it would really be. Like that's my problem with it.
All I'm saying is that if you draft him in your redraft leagues, just be ready to be tilted every single week when he's put on the injury report.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this too. If you guys look at my rankings, like I have a pretty big tier in that area of the draft with like Nico and Neighbors and Brian Thomas. If you just look at the ranking, I have been lower on Neighbors versus the market in ranking. Like, if you look at ADP on like Yahoo, Neighbors goes ahead of Puka right now, which to me, I can't get behind because Puka has a much more attractive offensive environment than Neighbors does with probably similar, if not better peripherals. So I just can't get behind that. So they're in a season long format. There is a chance that if you have a tiebreaker like that, this is an easy way to just say like, okay, I'm going to go with the other guy.
JJ, did you say Yahoo?
Yahoo.
I think you did the commercial Yahoo. You remember it's like, yeah, I think that's what you did. I say Yahoo.
Yahoo. Yeah. I don't know. It's not like a word that we say day to day. So it's not, doesn't roll off the tongue.
I think you actually added the exclamation point in Yahoo. Yahoo.
Yeah, but because they took it out, right?
I think they did.
Yeah. Because I used to put the exclamation point in my writing and I don't anymore.
Oh, yeah. Costco Matt says Kitchen's title might be the best part of these shows. Appreciate it. Let's get on to the next one. Clearing the moss for Brooks. We have our first report that Zach Moss might not make the team. We already kind of knew this.
I've been saying this for months. And I'm not the kind of person that victory laps stuff and would whatever. This isn't even like a set in stone thing. It's just been bizarre. I went on Liam Murphy's stream late at night a couple nights ago because I was done with work and I was like, I couldn't work anymore. And I saw that he was streaming. So I left a comment and then he's like, hey, do a draft with me. So I just did a draft with him. It was a fun time. And we talked about this backfield. And to me, it's been pretty clear cut. It's been, they get Samaje Perine. He could play sort of a third, a long down and distance, third down back kind of role, because that's what he did in Cincinnati before all of this, right? Before he left Cincinnati. They draft Taj Brooks. It really, to me, came down to Brooks or Moss. Mm-hmm. And with Moss and the amount of guaranteed money he had versus Brooks and using the draft capital and the talent level, to me, it was always going to be a Chase Brown, Taj Brooks, Samaje Perine backfield. It might not happen, right? But I'm just, the reason I say the victory lap thing, I'm just surprised that this wasn't already the standard take.
Yeah.
That's it.
I did hear you on the stream this morning say that you might have some more rankings updates as far as Chase Brown goes. So
I do think with the coach speak of him, because with Brown, the fear is that he ran so pure the second half of last season from a volume standpoint that even a little bit can shift that, right? Similar to like a Kyron Williams, just a little bit of a change can shift that. The difference is that Chase Brown is in a probably more elite offense than Kyron Williams is, and they target the running back more than the Rams do. So it's a better situation, which is why he goes a little bit ahead of Kyron. But I think that Chase Brown is a much better value than Kyron because of all of that. And now if they're sitting here saying that he could break records and stuff like that, I don't think that's nothing. I don't want to let that be my analysis, but I've always liked Chase Brown as a player, and I think he's capable, and he did that at Illinois in college. And so my stance with Brown is why should Josh Jacobs be going ahead of Chase Brown at this point? If there is that kind of coach speak going on, if he does get a similar workload, or at least 95% of his workload, when we know that in Green Bay, for instance, they're going to throw the ball more. There's probably some regression coming from a pass rate standpoint. I'm just going to go Chase Brown over Josh Jacobs at this point. That's the big shift in movement.
Okay. We've got Niners wide receiver news item here, because it just seems like every week we're talking about this. And this week we've got one guy who's apparently not close to practicing, another guy who is pretty close to practicing, who's also on the PUP list, and then a third guy who, if those other two would have been out, would have had more run. Jacob Cowing, he tore his hamstring or pulled his hamstring. So
yeah,
lots going on with the Niners receiving core.
Yeah, and the problem, and I'm going to pull up their R lads right now just so that I don't forget anyone. The problem is that, they drafted Jordan Watkins.
Yeah.
They drafted Jordan Watkins this year earlier than I expected him to go. And I wasn't a big Jordan Watkins guy. Oh my gosh, I forgot how many ads there are on R lads. It's like I'm surprised my computer hasn't just exploded just opening up this website. Jordan Watkins.
One of my tabs open was R lads for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. That alone could crash your computer. Yeah. Isaiah Nair is one that Matt Waldman liked a whole lot and actually didn't look terrible in the prospect model, but he's pretty deep, on that depth chart at this point. Demarcus Robinson is kind of intriguing now just because he's the veteran presence kind of back there. I like Jacob Cowing. Jacob Cowing to me was last year's candidate to be Tank Dell. And I was excited. I was actually taking some 20th round Cowing in best ball whenever I would get Purdy.
He had a good week 18 showing.
Yeah. I think he's a pretty good player.
Yeah.
But, I think all roads go back to Jawan Jennings, who is playing. He's not holding out. He's practicing. He's doing things. Him and Pearsall, we've been getting him at a discount.
Yeah.
On DraftKings over the last week or so because of the pup news, but it sounds like he's going to be back after this weekend. So I'm still buying into those wideouts, and the guys that are deeper on your depth on their depth chart, maybe you could throw them to your bench in dynasty, but that's about it.
But what about Ayuk though? I mean,
the news for him, I haven't. He's been such an afterthought for me that I haven't really
not even going near
because I don't think that's the kind of player I want unless I have like a lot of IR spots or something that I want in my season long leagues. And then in best ball, you can make the argument, but it's just, they've been kind of weird about reporting on that injury. And it feels like it's going to be more of like a maybe early November thing than like an early October thing.
All right. We'll let you put your reaction there. While we talk about the Chiefs rookie kingdom, you had 2 later round guys yesterday working with the ones, Brashard Smith, the running back there, and wide receiver Jalen Royals. So I know that you liked Royals. Brashard Smith, what are your thoughts on him?
Both of them were late round darts in the draft guide. Like I'm not sure. I don't think this means that they're going to like get tons and tons of run, this season with the ones and as starters. But the reason I like Jalen Royals was strictly because, and we've seen this before with like teams and the Chiefs in particular. Like I liked Isaiah Pacheco coming out because he had a Damian Williams comp who had worked in that Chiefs offense historically, right? And then Jalen Royals, his top comp in my model was in the Zap model was Rashee Rice. And now Rashee Rice has this looming suspension. I'm not surprised they're going to get Jalen Royals some reps because he too is sort of this yak guy. He actually has a lot more speed than Rice. He was like a track athlete. Jalen Royals was. And so there might be a little bit more of a speed element and not as much of the dog element in him per se. And so like, I think Royals though is sort of like their backup plan for Rice and why they got him on day 3. And then with Brashard Smith, model loved him. He was a low risk player in the model, which means the model liked him a lot more than where he was drafted. Converted wide receiver. He goes and he plays running back last year at SMU and he carries a big workload. He's efficient. He's good. This is admittedly the kind of player I kind of fall in love with often, like Tyrone Tracy last year, which ended up working out. Sometimes it doesn't, but I like the guys who have that pass catching backbone because it means that they're athletes at the end of the day. Like they're good. Like they're just good players. And if that translates to an offense that has a very creative offensive line or offensive mind running it, I'm intrigued. So I think Brashard Smith is going to make the team. I think that he could be very involved as a receiver in this offense, while Isaiah Pacheco is sort of that early down bruiser. And then whoever they end up keeping as like a third running back, whether it's like Eli Mitchell, Kareem Hunt, whoever, could be more of like the backup, to more Pacheco, or if something happens to Pacheco, they can kind of get a committee going. But like, I think Brashard Smith is a great click still in best ball because I think he's going to get at least some work.
Yeah, and if you're not subscribed already to our newsletter, please do so because Brashard Smith made a little cameo in Tuesday's newsletter. So as far as
we'll talk about it in a second,
finding the next
Bucky
Irving, that's what it was. I was going to say Tyrod or Tracy, so obviously you had already pegged him. You're trying to find out who this year's Bucky Irving is. All right. Hail to Pitts. I knew this one would be close to your heart. We've got word out that Kyle Pitts is now working with the receivers. He's looking good.
Did you see his entrance to camp yesterday?
Yes.
The memes were really good.
Yeah.
Like it was basically like his effort running a route.
Your team. Yeah. You're just saying doubt it. I'm just saying I'm ready to get hurt again.
What do you think the proper exposure in best ball to Kyle Pitts is? Like, what's your ideal exposure to Kyle Pitts? What percent?
15%.
Really?
I feel like I've been drafting him a lot more. He just seems like I'm also in that elite tight end guy. And again, Kyle Pitts, Arroyo, these guys feel like good clicks that have potential upside. we call them slappies sometime. You're always looking for the upside. And this year it might work out for the Kyle Pitts slappies. That's what I'm telling myself. Someone
15,
mentioned in the Discord chat.
15. So for anyone who's not a best ball bro, like 15% is almost drafting Kyle Pitts twice as much as what expectation would be, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, right.
He's going so late. He's going like 160s. Like, I mean,
pretty late. I think 8 or 9%, 7 to 9%. I think just being at market is probably the safest and smartest thing to do with a player who has just continuously underperformed and not seem to give that like extra effort. Him playing with wide receivers scares the crap out of me because it's telling me that he's not good enough to just play tight end. Yeah. I mean, 50, I like Costco Matt saying 15%. You're definitely getting her.
I mean, I'm ready for it. Let's see how much I have of him.
It's going to be painful. I think I'm at 7% right now.
12%.
All right. 12% is fine. 15's aggressive.
Okay.
For a guy that we now have a 3-year sample or 4-year sample, however long he's been in the league.
But here's what I'm saying with Kyle Pitts is that now, how you go out in the sun for the first time, you get a sunburn. Second time, not as bad of a sunburn. Third time, fourth time, it's a tan, baby. Like, that's how I feel with Kyle Pitts. You're getting him in the, 14th, 15th, 16th round. Just go ahead and sign me up for getting hurt again, because I'm already just used to it.
Fool me once, etc., etc.
Yeah,
et
yeah. Someone mentioned this is his Devontae Parker year, and yeah, sure. AJ Green light. Give me.
Let's just. You know what we should do with our analysis is take a random outlier from the past and say this is what's going to happen this year.
I'm drafting off of vibes and getting all the money back from the past few years.
I actually don't think he's that bad of a pick because they also have a really good Week 17 potential game against the Rams. But I mean, like I'm not fading in best ball. I'll have a hard time probably going after him in season long. I just think there's better options like that I would rather throw a dart at that you can kind of make up for, via the waiver wire. But it's tough, man. At this point, it's tough.
All right. Fake Mooney landing. I saw that you said you hate football.
I do.
After seeing that he took a hard fall today at camp.
I hate football.
Yeah.
I hate injuries. I have a lot of Darnell Mooney. I think that he's set to be a really good value. There's a lot of trends that point in his favor that I talk about in the draft guide. So yeah, I mean, I want Mooney to be healthy. That's it.
Okay. And then Fance off for Arroyo.
This is probably your best effort for headline. That's got to be your best headline so far.
Did you see though? I just put in the fake Mooney landing in there. Like that was off the cuff. Like these are off the cuff. But Noah Fant off the Seahawks. He's cut. Reportedly rumored that he was going to go to Cincinnati for a tryout or just to visit, I guess, a team visit.
Yeah.
Not sure what's going on there. But now you've got Barner and Arroyo there in Seattle. They're thinking that Arroyo is already going to be playing some wide receiver. So anxious to hear what you say after you just said that about Kyle Pitts in the receiver role, what you're saying about Arroyo now.
Yeah, but here the difference is that they tried Pitts at tight end and now they're moving him to wide receiver and getting wide receiver reps. It probably speaks more to the lack of depth that Atlanta has, but I'm pulling up my prospect model right now, which I should have had open. This actually might crash my computer. But if I look at Elijah Arroyo and where the tight end model, which isn't as good, the tight end model is not as like robust, something I'm going to work on next year. But Arroyo was basically like a guy that got drafted where his marks said he probably should have gotten drafted. We don't have a 40 for him, so he didn't even get the adjustment of being a good athlete when he might be. Good draft capital, good career yards per route run rate. Those are things that, and if he did have like a 4.6 40 or something like that, he would have looked quite good. So I think Arroyo is pretty interesting. And the more that I think about it, the more I'm like, probably should have even been higher on him, as like a prospect, because like if he would have run, like he would have looked pretty good within this model. So I think he's worth a dart. AJ Barner didn't really show us anything last year. I don't know why we'd expect him to be like some massive present. And the other thing too is that we want presence. We want these tight ends to be on teams where they could hypothetically be a top 2 target on their team. And I think that's, not to say that Cooper Kupp would not be that player, but he's older. Maybe there's more injury risk or what have you. And this could emerge for Arroyo. It's not the best offense in the world, but I could see it.
Okay. He's going right now. It feels like after this news broke, I could still get him in the 18th, 19th rounds. Now people are starting to grab him like 14, 15, 16 in that
early
range.
Yeah. 14, 15 is like, I always see like the 17th as you could get a 20th round player right here. And it's not that big of a deal. If you need like Jalen Naylor for a McCarthy stack or something.
Yeah.
So like, there's not really much of an opportunity cost. I think if you're in the 14th, there's still some, like, that's still like Hunter Henry area and stuff, where like you're getting Strange. Brenton Strange, like pretty legit tight end. So I probably wouldn't be reaching as high there.
You got a lot of Brenton Strange. You love the Strange.
I mean, I just need Noah Fant to not go to Jacksonville, and I'll be a happy guy.
All right, let's move on to today's data.
Yeah, so I did a newsletter this week where I looked at day 3 running backs. So guys drafted after pick 100 or after pick 99, 100 onwards that are in the Zap model database. So these are players who were either at the NFL Combine or who got drafted since 2011. And I looked at them to see which ones since 2011 gave us, a lot of fantasy production. So instead of looking at season-long points per game, which obviously would skew towards players just playing a lot and getting work right away, which is, like a Dameon Pierce, let's say, because he just started right away for Houston. I looked at top weeks, so top 24, top 12 weeks, and I just subjectively weighted top 12 weeks a little bit more. And it gave me this data set of 11 day 3 running backs or undrafted running backs in James Robinson's case, who basically, these are the best day 3 undrafted running backs in fantasy football since 2011. And so my question was, what kind of traits do these guys share? And I think the two main things, like there were other things, like people emailed me even, and they were like, well, a lot of them are younger and blah, 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 which not wrong, but I wanted to have some like very glaring overarching traits and rules, right? So if you scroll down a little bit, the two sort of traits were that they're not usually super late picks. Like the only guy that went undrafted here was James Robinson. Most of them were like 4th and 5th round picks. The average pick, I don't know, I don't have the average right in front of the median pick. I don't have right in front of me, but they were not necessarily like 7th round picks. And then the more important thing, I think, is that these day 3 picks were almost always coming from ambiguous backfields. The highest ADP of any of these players from a teammate in their backfield was Bucky Irving last year, where Rachaad White was the RB14 by ADP. The majority of them are in the RB 30, 31 range. So their teammate running back that year, and Jamal Williams and Dameon Pierce were both their own team's top running back picked. But on average, the teammate ADP was like RB 30, RB 31, which is a very ambiguous situation. It's a wide open backfield. So then I said to myself, okay, who are the day 3 backs this year who are in more wide open backfields? And I think the candidates this year are probably, you can scroll down more, I have them listed. They're probably Bashal Tutin, Cam Scadaboo, Dylan Sampson, Jaden Blue, and Trevor Etienne. Like those are the go-to 5, I think, that we should feel best about as being like this year's Bucky Irving. But then I think there's some honorable mentions with Kyle Monangai, really wide open situation in Chicago, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. You have Brian Robinson, who's not a pass catcher, Austin Eckler, who's up there in age, and then Brashard Smith, who we already talked about. To me, if there's going to be a Bucky Irving this year, which there's not one, I mean, he's arguably the best or second best day 3 back from a fantasy perspective, probably the best because his production was so back weighted the way that it was, and he was so impactful, for the weeks that he did get starts and stuff. He's probably been the best day 3 back that we've seen in recent history. So there's probably not going to be a Bucky Irving this year, but I think these are the candidates that we should be looking at for, who some of these day 3 guys could be who emerge.
All right. The Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I drafted him today it feels like the first time, because I thought we were fading him. Like,
I love that you say we, and then
yeah,
we shared exposure one day, and I'm like over 10% with both Manungai and
yeah, I
Merritt right
felt a
now.
little betrayed because I thought we had like a blood oath that we would not draft Corey Krosky Merritt. But
The
that
thing is,
again, that's when that camp comes into play also to
yes.
see.
Yes. And look, I think Best Ball Bros would probably say you don't need to do that because we're going to learn more in camp and you can get exposure as camp goes through and happens and stuff. And I get it. I think it's a little bit different on DraftKings personally, where you get those extra 2 rounds where like the players who are actually going to emerge from round 20, even like the established wide receivers, we don't even know if they're going to have a role, right?
Yeah.
We don't know if they're going to get volume. I know that we don't want dead players on our team. But we have no idea which players are going to be live, right? Even if they're veterans or rookies. So I have sprinkled those guys in. I think that Krosky Merritt, his profile wasn't great, but a lot of times, with the ZAP model in particular, and I wrote about this in the email, like the ZAP model is way more focused on day 1 and day 2 running backs than day 3 running backs, because day 3 running backs don't emerge very often, right? And so it's very hard to project and predict without overfitting who those day 3 running backs are going to be. So I try not to overfit. I try, I'm testing the model and making sure that it's working. And so a lot of times the day 3 backs are just players that we wouldn't have necessarily expected. Now I always update the model and I try to, make it more predictive and better. And in doing that this year, Bucky Irving does look a lot better. And I can tell you guys right now, before you start yelling at me, I'm not overfitting because the testing data doesn't include Bucky Irving, doesn't include him at all. So that's not part of, so there's no way that I could be overfitting for Bucky Irving. But he does look a lot better than he did last year. I'm mad that I didn't have this iteration this year because I wasn't high enough on Bucky last year. But yeah, like with day 3 backs, we see weird stuff happen for that like 1 year. Usually these guys, if they break out in their rookie season, Bucky is definitely an outlier because he was just so freaking good. But if they break out in their rookie season, they usually fall like afterwards. I mean, look at the list of 11.
Yeah.
None of these guys had like long lasting
Careers,
high volume fantasy cares,
Someone mentioned Zach Stacy, who was
Yeah.
at one point the pride of Vanderbilt football until he was not. As far as the candidates for this year, this is the name that stood out to me though.
Yeah.
Because if you look at these other guys, they're being drafted relatively high. I mean, in the 12th, 13th, 14th rounds right now. Like, I think right now, if you look just at the best ball data, it's Jaden Blue who's falling a little bit past Dylan Sampson now. Trevor Etienne sometimes not even being drafted in a 20-round draft. So I thought that name stuck out.
I think in best ball, like he's another guy that people should be drafting right now because, again, going back to the Chuba stuff that I've been kind of talking about all offseason, I think they've wanted to have more of a committee than they did last year. I think they want a pass catching back. That's why they get Rico Dowdle and they draft Trevor Etienne. And I don't know if you saw this. So Eric Eager, do you guys know Eric? Do you know Eric Eager? He was at PFF for a while and he's done. So Eric Eager joined the Panthers last year or 2 years ago.
As a data guy, right?
Yeah, as like one of their head data people. And there was a sort of a story about how they're leaning in on him more. He like ran all these simulations and stuff about who would be available when in the NFL draft this year. And then there was a specific story about them talking about Trevor Etienne and all of them sort of aligning onto Trevor Etienne. Like Canales liked him a lot and Eager and them liked him and all this kind of stuff. And so it was another reason for me to be like, okay, yeah, some confirmation bias with the Trevor Etienne stuff.
Pretty awesome that a guy in the fantasy space joins an analytics club. I mean, because we always say, what if we could be,
Well, to be fair, he was always like a real football guy, more so for them. But he was also, a active online Twitter going on the podcast that we do and stuff. Like I know him; he's a great dude. Like, or from my interaction, I don't know him like deeply, but like it's cool that we see the transitions happen that we do of people that are just, S posting on the internet and going to these front offices.
All right. Andrew says, anyone else high on Bryce Young? You're one of these two hosts are very high on Bryce Young, but we'll talk about that in a second because we got to get on to Draft day mistakes.
Yeah.
First on the list is ignoring opportunity costs with VORP.
This is going to be the most complicated thing that I'm going to talk about on today's show, which is why
first you need to explain what VORP is for the people that do not understand what VORP is, other than a cool sounding word.
Okay. I'm gonna brain vomit a bit here.
Okay.
So way back in the day, I did the late round quarterback ebook. And the idea behind that was that quarterbacks are low in demand because you're only starting one of them, and they're high in supply, right? Because they're low in demand. And therefore you could wait on the position, and the position gets drafted later and later than we typically see at running back and wide receiver. A lot of people will just do, especially back then, we'll just do a simple VORP analysis to say this guy's better than this guy's better than this guy. What VORP is value over replacement player, right? So a VORP analysis might say, here's all these projections for these players, okay, at every position. We can't really compare a quarterback to a running back because they're not playing the same position. You want to compare within the position as opposed to across positions, unless there's like a flex spot. And so with quarterback versus running back versus wide receiver, you need some number to be able to compare across positions. And one way in doing that is with VORP. And you say, okay, here's this player's projection, points per game, season-long projection, whatever it is. And here's a baseline player's projection. That baseline player could be the worst hypothetical starter in a league. It could be what you deem as a replacement level player. Maybe it's like the RB24 in a 12-team league. Maybe you deem it as the RB36. That's one of the reasons why there's a lot of inconsistencies with VORP, is because there's no standard way to find that baseline player. But people calculate the baseline player and they just subtract the two numbers and they say, this is how many points per game this player is versus his baseline at his position. So let's say the quarterback is 5 points per game better than his baseline, and the running back is 4 points per game better than his baseline. In that case, you might be saying, oh, get the quarterback because he's 5 points better than the baseline player. But you can't do that without factoring in cost. And that is the biggest problem that I've found that people run into when they're drafting, is they'll say, okay, this is the example that I have in the draft guide. I wrote about this in the tight end section. So what this chart shows is the tight end 1 compared to the tight end 12 by expected VORP. Okay. So by expected VORP, I mean the tight end 1 is through the years has been drafted all over the place, but his average expected points per game based on his ADP has been X. Okay. And then the tight end 12 has had an expected points per game of Y. That number 4.9 is the difference between X and Y. Okay. And then at tight end 2, it's 4 points between, Z and Y, whatever that tight end 2's expected points per game average is. And then same with tight end 3. Now, where we're drafting the tight end 1, the tight end 2, and the tight end 3 is not where we draft the RB1, the wide receiver 1, and the QB1, right? Where we've drafted the tight end 1 historically has been around running back 9, and it's been around wide receiver 6. And you just do the exact same exercise for those positions, and you see, oh, wow, tight end, the high-end tight end VORP looks a lot better than it does at running back and wide receiver. But here's the problem. Because the demand at tight end is not as great as it is at running back and wide receiver, you can get viable tight ends later, which means the baseline at tight end gets drafted many more rounds and many more picks after the baseline running back and wide receiver does. So the baseline tight end gets drafted later. And when you factor in the number of picks from the average tight end 1, the average tight end 2 to that baseline tight end, you actually see that the opportunity cost in drafting that tight end is much, much greater because you're losing more points per game by not picking the running back, by then not picking the wide receiver than you are at tight end. It's not to say that I would fade all elite tight ends, because there's definitely, you have to look at it from a positional standpoint and an individual player perspective and say, Brock Bowers is really, really good, so I'm just going to draft Brock Bowers, or I really like Trey McBride. That's fine. What I'm saying is you cannot just look straight up at VORP and say this player is this much better than his baseline player without factoring in cost. It is so unbelievably important. I would argue this is the number one issue that drafters have, is that they're not factoring in cost of that baseline player.
And this is something that is big in your analysis. It's available in the draft guide. That's the only plug I'm going to give for the draft guide until the end of the show. All right. Number 2.
I love these reveals because I can't remember what I wrote too.
Yeah. Drafting only off of projections. See, you think that this is like the biggest thing. I feel like drafting only off projections might be the biggest thing, just because
Yeah.
people might not understand, might not have like the grasp of VORP and the opportunity cost relative to. We've had questions like, hey, can you post JJ's projections next to his ranks?
Yeah. Right.
Which kind of defeats the purpose of the tiered rankings that you do.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would think of it this way. As you're moving through your draft, if you were to draft only off of projections and you're in like round 7 or round 8, you're going to get a player who doesn't necessarily have proper upside when you don't want that player in round 7 or round 8 to just meet expectation. You want them to be way better than expectation. You want your first round pick, your second round pick to at least give you some floor and ceiling, but you only want ceiling outcomes mostly for your late round picks, your guys ranked in the 8th round, 9th round. And I would argue, and I've argued for years, that you should be chasing ceiling a lot earlier in your draft than you think you should, right? But this goes beyond just that notion. This also goes to the idea that, I've talked about ambiguous backfields for like a decade now,
Yeah.
right? And ambiguous backfields, we often see players emerge from them and be the biggest league winners at running back. And people think the reason for that is like injury, whatever the reason is. The logic behind it is these guys are being drafted in the middle rounds together, these backfields. So for instance, I mean, we could even use Jacksonville this year as like more of a late round ambiguous backfield or later round ambiguous backfield, but they're being drafted later. Why are the Jacksonville backs being drafted later? Because there's 3 of them and no one knows what the true answer is at running back in Jacksonville. But realistically, one of those guys could easily emerge. And if one of those guys emerges, I mean, the fact that there's 3 running backs being drafted where they're being drafted in Jacksonville tells us that there's probably a pretty good situation there. And so if one of them ends up emerging, then that player can really just go nuts in fantasy football. And so with ambiguous backfields, those players' projections don't look that great. Like you should probably be ranking them a little bit higher than where they're projected. But because there is that upside of they take over the backfield and injury occurs, et cetera, et cetera. So like, another example is like Dallas. You can even go to wide receiver. Dallas with George Pickens. George Pickens right now, let's say his projection says he's the wide receiver 30 in fantasy football. That projection is assuming that CeeDee Lamb is healthy. So if you're drafting him at wide receiver 30, you're actually getting kind of a value in George Pickens because there's more of that contingent upside. If something were to happen to CeeDee Lamb, we know that Pickens has that 30% target share upside in that scenario. Whereas a player in that range like Cortland Sutton, where we kind of know who the dude is for the most part. I'm not saying that he's bad. I'm not saying he's in a bad environment, but if someone gets hurt in Denver, nothing's really going to change more than likely that dramatically or in the same way as with Pickens for Cortland Sutton. So you have to think about the range of outcomes more than that singular number that's giving you the projection.
Yeah, and that's why we also, that's why people love the prospect guide. They love the rookie analysis. I'm just going to give an arbitrary take here. Like my home league is an auction-based keeper league with a tight end premium. It's a super flex. Last year, I love to just spend money on guys who I know are going to perform, who have high upside, and then I'll leave some money in the tank and just throw darts at the bench players. Well, it was Brock Bowers and Bo Nix.
Right.
Both of those guys last year. So I'm keeping them this year, especially like when you're in those leagues that values high upside like that. It's those rookies are just so important for the following year.
We're getting like El Oso saying, at what point would you say you draft, you pivot, look at ceiling, or you pivot to only looking at ceiling, like 12th round? I don't think there's a round. What I do think though, is that your mindset should be on ceiling as soon as like round 5. Your mindset should always be on ceiling, but I'm saying like, as you move down, you're ignoring floor more and more because the opportunity cost in getting that guys, if you lose your 6th round pick, if your 6th round pick busts in a season long format, especially in a more casual one, you're not screwed at all. You're fine. It's not the end of the world.
All right. Speaking of what we just talked about, ignoring your league settings. More flex spots, more wide receiver spots matter. That makes sense to me, JJ.
Yes. One of the most frustrating things is when, I put rankings together and someone's like, is this for half PPR or full PPR? And it's like, the question you should be asking is this for start 3 wide receivers, start 2 wide receivers? How many flex spots? Because that's what dictates where we should be drafting these players far more than if you're getting half more point per reception. We know intuitively that in super flex leagues, quarterbacks get drafted earlier. Why? Because there's a higher demand for the position. What happens if you add 5 flex spots, 5 running back spots to your lineup? Running back is going to be the pick that people are going after for the first round and a half of your draft because they matter so much more. So don't just pay attention to the scoring settings. You got to pay attention to the overall league settings. It's so unbelievably important.
Got some friends that always call me every year, and now I know what their league settings were, but they act like it was just normal league settings. Turns out they only had 2 receiver slots,
right?
And it was 0 PPR.
Yeah.
And so that, that changes things when you're not getting points at any points for receptions, and it's just a very touchdown heavy league.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Ignoring ADP.
People think that they can beat the market all the time, and you can beat the market, but you're going to beat the market more incrementally than you are just across the board all the time, right? Not only that, but your goal in your draft should be to extract value. And the only way to extract value is to have a good idea of where other players are getting drafted, because then I can pass on this guy right now and get a guy a little bit later. So I think it's just really important to try to exploit as much value as you possibly can. And look, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people get way too fixated on certain players in their draft when their consideration set of players should be really wide and not narrow. So, you'll look at like my players to target, for instance. You don't have to only draft those players, I've gotten multiple emails so far after the draft guide, and I do every year, where people are like, okay, you have your rankings, but then you have your players to target. Now, if you say that Kenneth Walker's a player to target, but you have Kenneth Walker ranked below Chase Brown, does that mean I should draft Kenneth Walker over Chase Brown? Because Kenneth Walker is no, Kenneth Walker base versus ADP is why Kenneth Walker is a guy who is a player to target. I'm not giving them an extra. If they got an extra boost, they would just be ranked ahead of that player, right? So the idea here is there's a scenario where you can get both of those guys if you just play the ADP game. You don't just reach because they're on a list that says target this player. And then not only that, there are players that I love in fantasy football this year that are not part of my players to target list because the market likes them too. But I would love to have them on my team. I don't have Brian Thomas as a player to target, but I think Brian Thomas could go nuclear this year. So it's important to understand that ADP is a really good guide to work off of, and specifically know what platform you're drafting off of and what the ADP says on that particular platform.
Yeah, especially this year where we assume it certainly appears that this year is going to be deeper than in years past for those guys. All right, misreading the room.
Yeah, this is something I added at the last second, but I think that one thing people should, and this kind of goes back to the VORP stuff that I talked about, where if your quarterback VORP says something, right, and it says you got to draft a quarterback here, let's say it's round 2 or round 3 in your season-long league, your home league, and it's hey, Josh Allen is the best value right now, draft Josh Allen. You have to remember that if you're the first, because that running backs and wide receivers are going to fly off the draft board regardless. But if it's in particular a quarterback, because we do see leagues oftentimes just go late round quarterback. If it is a quarterback, make sure that your league mates are going to be drafting quarterbacks early and not late. So we say this on DraftKings all the time with best ball. We've talked about it on the show. I'm becoming a best ball bro quite a bit. But when quarterbacks get drafted earlier, the later round quarterbacks start to get drafted earlier, that's an advantage to the teams that are drafting the Josh Allens, the Jaden Daniels, the Jalen Hurts, and the Lamar Jacksons of the world, because that baseline player, to go back to what we talked about earlier, that baseline player is now being drafted earlier. There's fewer picks between that quarterback that you're drafting and that baseline guy. So you don't want to misread the room and be the first person to draft that quarterback, because, you can be, but just know that you better hope that people are drafting quarterbacks right after that, because you could really, really devalue that pick. There's nothing worse than drafting Josh Allen in the 3rd round and then seeing Lamar Jackson go in the late 5th, right? That is a big, big value miss and a misread of your overall draft room.
And I'm speaking for experience when I say that it also leads to sometimes chasing your losses and trying to compound the situation. Like if you draft Josh Allen early and then like no quarterbacks are coming off the board, and then you see a quarterback who's like 2 rounds, after ADP, and no one's still drafting him, and you don't even need a second quarterback then, but you're trying to punish your league.
Yeah,
It just really punishes your team, and it's really easy to do when those mistakes compound. Good stuff, JJ. As far as like the questions and stuff, we are continuing to answer some of these during the live stream, but a lot of the questions are answered during the mailbag episodes that we do. We're going to be doing a members only live stream on Patreon. And let me just give a plug for the Patreon, the members Patreon. I'm glued right now. In fact, while we were going, you might have even heard the ding go off, because I'm glued to the NFL News and Rumors channel in our Discord. We've got the redraft. If you're just in redraft leagues, we got a best ball chat, we got a dynasty chat, lots of stuff for you to get plugged into. So yeah, like I'm not even gonna say what just happened. And Michael Penix saying that, see, we got Kyle Pitts the ball. Yeah, gonna be a lot of that. I'm not gonna say that that's what like happened. I'm just giving that as an example.
I'm shocked that a quarterback says that he wants to get one of his wide receivers.
He said, gonna be a lot of that, JJ. So
I don't mind Pitts. I'm trying to be at market with Pitts, buddy. I'm not fading Pitts.
I'm not. It's not about you fading Pitts. It's about me justifying my
15% Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, because I've got 12.
Wrong? What could go wrong?
I've got 12. Just give me a few little points, a few little more bags to pack. Appreciate everyone for their comments. Again, we got the late round draft guide, got the membership going on lateround.com. That's where you go for either of those. We got some exciting news coming up about existing members. So really, really excited for that. That should be live by this time next week. So as far as that announcement goes,
I'm excited for that. Yeah.
It should be good. It should be fun. JJ, you got any closing thoughts?
No, next week we're gonna do more player specific stuff. Actually, the next 2 weeks. We're basically in that part of the season where you got to do the players to target, the players to avoid, all that kind of stuff. It's just more straightforward. That's what August is all about. So I think more people like that stuff and they care more about it. But we had to, we got to talk about the other more game theory stuff as well.
Like, subscribe. Next week's show, episode 10, is going to be the last show of July, and then we are in the thick of it, baby. It's going to be a wild ride. Appreciate you all. JJ, appreciate your analysis and all the free stuff that you give us. And thank you, DraftKings, for sponsoring the show. And we'll see you next time here on the Late Round Fantasy Football Show, sponsored by DraftKings. Peace.
Yeah.